And welcome back. My next guest is Richard Jarcho, a U.S. Army veteran. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, sir.
So, Richard, very happy to have you on the program. As you may be aware, when I became town supervisor, we started this program, Hometown Happenings, back in 2016. We're up well in excess of 40 episodes that we've done. And on each of those episodes, I think it's very important for us to make sure that we recognize our veterans. So you're in our veterans segment, obviously based upon your service. And during this segment, we really talk about the individual vet. We want you to talk a little bit about yourself, your background, about your service, and then some of the things that you're involved with within our community. So with that being said, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about your background, where you were born and raised?
I was born in Brooklyn, in Flatbush, in Williamsburg Hospital, about 83 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to PS 99, and then I went into high school, Midwood High School, and then I went to Long Island Agricultural School after graduating high school, and I was there for about a year and change, and I hurt my back, and I had to be pulled out of there. And when the back healed, I joined the service. I moved my number up at that time.
Well, that was, they still had the draft at that point.
Yes, they had the draft at that time. And I moved my number up, and I never knew what I was going to experience. Mm-hmm. And I went to Fort Dix for training.
So roughly when did you get into the service?
In 1958.
1958.
January 1958.
And so you elected to have your number moved up, so you
Yes.
went to serve. I mean, it wasn't 58. There wasn't active.
No, it was now. No, the fighting was over with in Korea, but they still had the draft.
So you went in around the time Elvis went in, right?
Yeah. But I went to Fort Dix. Then I was shipped to Fort Benning, Georgia, to be trained as a cook. I didn't want it, but I had to do it. I had no choice. And then as soon as I finished the training, I was shipped to Korea. And that was an experience I'll never forget.
So tell me about that training to be a cook. I mean, it's a long time ago, but what was that experience like? I mean, that was like 60 years ago. Was there extensive training? I mean, was it culinary type training?
No culinary. They just taught you how to do certain things and certain foods, and in that time, that was it.
Right.
And then the funny part of it, the whole thing was, they told you that you're going to be a cook and there'll be nobody to help you. You're going to have to do everything yourself. Okay, I got to do what I got to do. Mm-hmm. So we went over. I went on board the General Man. I'll never forget. There were 5,000 fellows on this boat.
And where did you take it out of California?
Yes, out of Oakland, California.
Okay.
It took us 28 days to get over there.
Ooh.
And we were stacked 5 high. And every other guy was seasick, throwing up like there was no tomorrow. We had bad weather. Anyway, we got to Korea. And the only way to get off the boat was going down the rope ladders. And I think I turned pure white going down the ladder. I got to the outfit in Korea, and the captain in charge calls me and he says, "You're not going to be a cook." I said, "Sir, I was trained to be a cook." He says, "No, you have 3 generators up on this site. You are going to be in charge of those 3 generators." And I said, "Sir, I don't know anything about generators." "Well, you better start learning." And I had to learn how to run the generators, and I did it. And it was the only way that we were able to get any supplies was by helicopter. There were no roads going up there. It overlooked North Korea. And it was a signal outfit, and as the jets went overhead patrolling, they had to report into this signal outfit, and the outfit would report to Seoul or Incheon, I don't remember, but it was a good experience. I had a dog there. That dog was closer to me than anyone else. and would sleep with me in the barracks, and wherever I went, that dog went. It was good. We had a good bunch of guys there. We couldn't go off the base because the whole base surrounding the base were minefields.
Wow.
And as I say, it was an experience. And I'll tell you one thing, it was cold.
Yeah.
As many layers of clothing you had on did not help.
So, my dad was a Korean War vet, served in the war in artillery, and I remember he didn't talk at all about his wartime experience. He saw some pretty rough stuff, and it was only twice that he talked a little bit to me shortly before he died about his experience. He just kind of, he did it, put it away. He had lifelong friends, from his service, but they never talked about it either, being in the combat. But one of the things I do remember my dad telling me was exactly that it didn't matter how much, how many layers of thermals you put on and extra socks, you just couldn't get, you couldn't stay warm,
Yes.
For certain parts of the year.
Well, I came home.
Just before you leave from that.
No, I'm not.
But just one last thing. You mentioned, so you literally you were like right near the border.
Yes.
To the north.
Yes.
So you were like kind of in the forward area at a time when there was an awful lot of tension that was growing between the United States and the Soviet Union. In '56, a couple of years before you went into the service, you had a lot of things going around, happening in the world. You had the issue in Hungary with the uprising. You had some issues that were taking place in Poland and some of the other Eastern Bloc countries. In Southeast Asia, leading up with, things starting to intensify in the late 50s with Vietnam before it really intensified with the U.S. in the 60s. And so tensions were rising, and because of that time period, there was really a reaction. So you were really there kind of in a post and a pre-war footing. What was that like for you? Being that close to the North Korean border at a time when there's, all these tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union at the time, and by extension with efforts that were taking place through the Soviets with the Chinese, and issues that were starting to manifest in Southeast Asia. What was that like for you, being that close? Was that a scary time?
At times it was scary. We went on alert quite a few times. We had to pull out all the heavy equipment, and some of the guys were really, really scared. They were crying. Thank God I kept my composure. But it was an experience I don't think I'll ever forget. One of the fellows says, "Look, there's a Chinese coming up the hill," and they start shooting the 50 caliber machine guns. And the sergeant says, "Stop, stop! There's nobody there." And it was tough. It really was. I try to not to remember most of that stuff that was there, because it was not healthy. I'll say that. Right. But I came home from Korea. Thank God for my family, because they smothered me with love to make sure I was okay. And I was home maybe 10, 11 months, and President Kennedy decided to do the Berlin crisis. And guess what? I had to go back in, and I went in for a year. And I was with this outfit from Long Island, and these guys were tough. I mean, tough. They would load and unload ships. And when the company commander would come around, they would throw eggs at him. I said, "You guys are crazy. They're going to go after you." No. This is the way we act. And then finally came home.
Where were you stationed then?
Fort Eustis, Virginia.
Okay. And you were in for a year there.
And we're in for a solid year there until they released all the reserves.
Wow. That had to be tough, because you were probably trying to get on with your career and everything with your life, and then...
They didn't care.
Yeah, and then you
couldn't beat it.
Back. Right.
There was no way of beating that.
Yeah.
You couldn't get around it. They didn't care. You're going back in, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And these guys were all from all walks of life. There were lawyers, accountants. There was no doctors that I know of. And they were proud of what they would do. But they were tough. They were really, really tough.
Right.
And then I came home, and I went to work for my cousin called Brancusi Marble in New York City on First Avenue and 55th Street, and sold marble tops and glass tops. And that was it at that time. That was the hottest thing going. And I stayed there for a while, for a few years, and then I decided I didn't want to stay any longer. I went out on my own. I went into the trucking business, and I would deliver imported cheese to New York City.
Oh, neat.
All imported, never did domestic, only imported cheese. And then I did it for about 30 years, something like that, and maybe 25, I don't remember exactly. But I couldn't take the traffic in the city anymore.
Right.
And the people there were driving like crazy, and the police, all they kept doing was pulling trucks over to write up tickets, and it got to a point where I couldn't take it. But at the last part of my trucking, I had to go out to Far Rockaway right after the hurricane hit.
Oh, yeah.
The bulwarks were demolished. I couldn't believe my sight. I had to make a very fast delivery, and we passed by the bulwarks. There was no more bulwarks.
Wow.
And I came home to my wife, and I started telling her. And we were sitting there watching TV, and on TV came this veteran husband and wife from Maryland. He lost his arms and legs, and his wife would push him around in a wheelchair. The house caught on fire. He lost everything. And I said to my wife, that's it. We have to start working with the veterans. And that started I'm doing the food program somewhere around 7 years.
Right.
It took me almost 2 years to get it going. Washington told me I can't do it. I'm not allowed. If I do it, I'm going to get arrested. I told Washington, take a long walk down a short road. I called Maryland, I called Virginia, and what happened was, one day at my synagogue, I was talking to one of my friends, and he said, why don't you speak to Bill Farber? Most people in this county know Bill Farber. He passed on.
Right.
And he put me on to the college.
Oh,
Jonathan Barnwell.
Wonderful man.
And, he gave me 35 names. And we went from house to house, from Orange County all the way down to Nyack. I had a truck, refrigerated truck. I had my family. I had my neighbors. And I had 2 veterans with me. And at the end of the day, the veterans called up Jonathan and told Jonathan he couldn't believe it. He didn't think that I would do it. And then a year after that, or 2 years after that, my daughter-in-law said to me, come on, get up, we're going to Sloatsburg. I don't want to go. You have to go. So I got up and we went, and I met the mayor. That started a whole ball game. We hooked up. We used Sloatsburg Town Hall as the giving out the food. We did a little bit over 100 veteran families then. I'm now up to 206, the last count.
Right.
April 13th at Sloatsburg Town Hall, we're going to do it again. They get a meal for 6, feed 6 individuals, and I became very friendly with people in West Point. And West Point called me and said, Richie, would you like to help the Coast Guard down in Staten Island? I said, what do you want? They said, well, you could get the food, and they need help down there. They have no food. The families are in trouble. To make a long story short, I fed 220 Coast Guard families.
Wow.
And I have to thank certain individuals because if it wasn't for them, I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's Pet Nutrition in Nanuet on 59. He gives me whatever money I need. Toyota on 59 in Airmont,
Mm-hmm.
he backs me up 100%. He'll give me whatever I need. And I have another individual named Scott.
Mm-hmm.
He donated, well, I think last Christmas he donated 200 turkeys.
Mm-hmm.
And the canned goods.
Wow.
During the interim, I decided I had to do more. And I decided to do try to figure out how I could do horse therapy with the veterans. It took me, so far it's taken me 3 years to put this thing together because of politics, especially in Ramapo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go into that.
That's a whole separate show.
That's a whole shit. I don't want to go near it. But thank God it's going. It starts in the second week of April in Orangeburg, Silver Rock Farms, run by Laura and her husband and her niece, Bruce, and her niece is, all of a sudden my mind went blank. They are super individuals. They have a list of veterans that they're going to start working with.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the horse from the sheriff's office, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And God willing, everything will be okay.
Right.
And these veterans, I'm just having a tough time getting the veterans in and getting funds in. Is very difficult to get.
Well, if someone wants to help with this, I mean, this is now a 501c3?
Yes, a 501c3 legitimate.
So how does somebody get in contact with you if they want to either volunteer or make a donation?
Donations, they have to go to our website.
And the organization's name is?
Veterans Angels of Hope.
Right. So Veterans Angels of Hope. And I know we met, and we're going to be talking with you here and with our police to see how we can kind of help get involved as well here through the town of Clarkstown. But just incredible story and a life of service, that you're offering to us. We're about out of time. So what I want to do is I want to thank you, Richie, for your service.
Thank you.
Your 2 tours of duty and your service to our country. But I want to thank you for your continuing service to the veterans, community. It's people like you that are really just unsung heroes of our community that are really out there doing extraordinary things and helping, vets to know that they're not forgotten and to help, bring them back into the community in some ways. Not just giving them food, but giving them opportunities as well. So I want to thank you for not just your service to our country in the military, but your continuing service to your fellow vets. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's about all the time we have. We'll be right back.